I love what I do, you know? Even when I'm tired, I still feel that I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing at this time. I am giving you, in my opinion, what is your right. You have a right to be witnessed. Yeah. And in this world, we don't witness other people. I lean more into the ones that do two things: appreciate neurobiology and appreciate the reality of human condition. I started off in the public sector working as a probation officer. Yeah. It is hard to know better and also see yourself make the mistakes. This is what I have to offer the world. And you know what? It may work, it may not work. I'm learning now to be so gentle with myself and forgive myself for just my own adaptations. There is nothing that is too much to sit with. The world needs your voice.
Hi, Akilah. I've
Hi.
I've so long admired like the depth, honesty, and have to say the rawness you bring to conversations about belonging, trauma, and relational healing. And it's just interesting how our paths cross. Just to go back memory lane, this is years ago. As you know, we have a consulting agency, Authentic Presence, and we were working with a well-known relational therapist who introduced the two of us. Think of the two of you might co-lead a course on systemic trauma and couples therapy. And while the project became your course, it was clear right away like how naturally our visions align. Like we were both exploring the same powerful intersection of therapy, social change, and spirituality, which I think made this collaboration feel almost inevitable. And of course, you bring something profoundly important to the field, a voice from the global South. And I remember like in undergraduate school, there was a book, North South, by the Chancellor of Germany. So I was really sensitive, like when you bring up the South, you know, and I think it's a perspective that remains underrepresented in the therapy profession. So it's lovely that you're here. You got, yeah, you got something on your shoulders to carry, to bring to the North. So yeah, I'd love to begin the conversation about where it all started for you. Like what shaped your early sense of self and how did the path begin to unfold into the work that you're doing?
I think that when I was doing my master's in social work, I think that was when, well, actually before that, but when I was in university, I think I began to deepen my understanding of the role of the system in people's individual lives. Yeah. I think before that, I sensed it, but I think in university, as I began to sit with what it meant to be Caribbean, what it meant to be Black, what it meant to be Global South, and just think about the ways in which those coalesced realities shaped my own experiencing, yeah, and the experiencing of those around me. I think that was the start of it for me. And so it then unfolded more and more, it moved into my practice. Yeah.
Mm.
So I started off in the public sector working as a probation officer. Yeah. And then I moved into the NGO world and then as a probation officer. And I think even then I began very slowly to understand that the persons who were under my supervision or care as a probation officer, that much more was happening in their lives than what was showing up in the office. So there were these wider systems that were playing a role. And these wider systems were also fueled by other historical realities, yeah, and global realities.
Mm.
And I think when I think about that experience, my university experience, and also sitting in the classroom, always something was always stirring within me when I think I was doing my master's in social work. I remember how profoundly impacted I was by an understanding of structural social work or radical social work, and just the ways in which the economic system and the social, like the social systems and cultural systems shape reality. So when I thought about my lived experience every day, as well as these things I was learning, when they all came together, it definitely resulted in my having an appreciation, you know, of the role of the system in practice. I would say for myself, so I grew up in very humble beginnings. Yeah. I it was a very, very interesting, I won't get too much into it, but it was a very interesting childhood. Yeah, from very humble beginnings. And when I look back at my own reality, I could see how the legacy of slavery, um, financial challenges, all of these things were shaping the reality of my childhood. Yeah.
And for
I think
people that don't know, you grew up in Trinidad and Tobago.
yes, Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah. So I could see how those things were shaping the reality of my childhood. And, so I think that in itself as well made me acutely aware. Yeah.
Mm. Were there moments or people from your childhood who just made you curious about human behavior, justice, healing?
I would say for some reason, my English literature teacher in high school, or what we call
Mm.
secondary school here, comes to mind. There was a way when we study literature, we study all of these, the Shakespeare and the whatever else, she always said that my brain works differently. So there's a way in which I'd have curiosities about things and the complexities, within within the characters that, some of my colleagues wouldn't necessarily have at all times. Yeah. And I think I always wondered to myself, what else is there? What else
Mm.
is happening here? Yeah. So that's a curiosity always in my mind. What else is happening here? What else is happening here? So I think,
Did
and
it also have a religious like resonance too, or is it more social?
for me, the influence on so I would say my greatest influence, even though I did have at the time a heavy religious influence when it comes to where I am right now in terms of how I think about certain things. I don't know. I wouldn't say that has necessarily influenced how I see certain things, though it was a critical time. Though it was a critical force in my life at the point in time. Yeah. Well, I did wrestle with some things in religion, because there's a relationship between religion and colonialism in this part of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to wrestle with some of those things, I'd say. And I had to wrestle with just the ways in which religion was misused, yeah, to displace or replace indigenous African ways of understanding the world. I'd say that for me was something that I had to really face head on in my early 20s, late teens and early 20s. Just seeing the ways in which um, indigenous value systems or the value systems of African people were not something that I had deep access to because of the role of colonization and settler colonization, I should say, and just the role of religion at the point in time. I'm not anti-religion, but I did have to face that in my own journey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just brought my own memory of being in eighth grade. I took an existentialist class. I just remember the teacher's name, Mr. Watson. And then I went to a heroin clinic in the inner city Baltimore.
Uh,
I should have been really scared, but I was just so fascinated. Like this was eighth grade. What's that? You're 14 years old, 13, 14. Like I was just so curious about human nature of like,
yeah.
and I like that it was like the bottom in a certain way of like desperation and addicts. But I
Yeah.
thought it was fascinating.
Yeah. I would say, what I should mention, when I started to understand Ifa tradition, yeah, that was a big eye opener for me because in Ifa tradition,
What tradition?
Ifa, IFA,
Okay.
yeah, right. When I that so Ifa tradition is largely tied to Yoruba African spirituality, right? And there's this understanding that there's the one God Olodumare, and then God manifests his God self, yeah, in various forms. So the thunder, the river, the sea, etc. And all of these have names from Oshun to Shango, Yemaja, etc. Right? And all of we call those orishas. And all of the orishas have their particular qualities, right? And then what I also learned in that spirituality is that we each have our own Ori, ORI. So your Ori is your head. Yeah. And I remember learning that, it is very important that you follow your Ori. Yeah, your own head, what you are here for, your own destiny. And I think that in particular influenced me a lot because I had moved into a place of really wanting to understand who I am and what's the energy that I am going to bring to the world and be very deliberate and intentional about following that. And to this day, when I wrestle sometimes with just stuff like meaning, purpose, etc., I have to consult, okay, who are you? What is the energy that you bring into the world? The other thing about Orisha spirituality that I really like is that all of these various Orishas, right? They are they have quote unquote good qualities and I don't like the word bad qualities, but I guess qualities that could feel or land as I hate the word harmful or problematic, but they have both sides, right? But when I was understanding or when I was being taught about Ifa, that wasn't seen as being a bad thing. You were taught that yes, too much of any energy in any direction could be harmful, and it was your responsibility to find balance. And so all of these orishas were beneficial. All of these orishas were valuable, even when they had qualities that could sometimes land on a human being as being kind of unpleasant or so. And that made me think, or that makes me think, I should say, about even my practice as a psychotherapist, as a therapist, because as I work with people, I see the different ways in which their bodies have adapted to reality. I see various behaviors. I see various emotional dispositions, etc. And one of the things I have learned from Ifa tradition and even being trained as a therapist, when I bring the two of them together, I begin to understand that these things that I see showing up are not good or bad. They just are what they are, right? And holding an appreciation for the things that other people may find problematic or challenging. I hold an appreciation for these as being adaptations. And I know a part of that has come from Ifa tradition, which holds so much value and honors various ways in which the Orishas behave. Yeah. So that too has influenced, I think, how I practice, how I understand self, and how I also approach my work sometimes with clients.
Looking back, was there any early experiences that through you might seem really ordinary at the time that planted the seeds for the work that you do? I see how that influenced your work, but was there that got you to want to be a psychotherapist?
What ordinary experiences? I think, if I'm to be quite honest, I think it's my own experience of pain.
Mm.
Um,
Your own healing journey?
yeah. I think many therapists can attest to that. I mean, things were so challenging, and I knew that I was carrying around something that felt so heavy and so tough. And I committed myself at a certain stage of my journey to support others.
Mm.
Yeah. And I think that um, it's so interesting. Right before this our meeting tonight, I was working with a client of mine, and this client has been struggling for a long time with a particular issue, and it's been going on for years. And there's a way in which my body sits with this and says, I get it, I understand it, and it's taking as long as it needs to take. And I
Mm.
think it has come from me looking at my own pain and
Yeah.
learning to not invalidate it, learning to be like, you know what, this takes as long as it's going to take. Because I did live a substantial period of my life in gross invalidation, invalidating myself, invalidating the pain I had felt due to the various traumas I'd experienced. And over time, I had to learn that what I am feeling is just a very understandable reaction to circumstances, what I was feeling. And I think what helped a lot was, you know, understanding neurobiology. I think that was really, really important. Me being able to understand neurobiology, yeah, and understanding the real shifts in the brain as a result of certain traumatic incidents, yeah. So understanding my own pain, understanding my desire to help others in theirs, and also understanding that the brain is shaped by experiences. I think all of that, when I brought those three together, they pushed me to see myself differently, to do this work differently.
I hear your kids squealing in the background, so I'm going to jump in and ask, and you have a beautiful son and daughter that I've played with many times. They have too much energy. They're like nuclear reactors. They've tired me out every time I wrestle with them. But I lose weight, so that's all good. How's that impacted your parenting?
Um, this question I think is very timely, because of where I am in my journey right now with my parenting. Um, I wish I could say that I had perfect. I practice perfect parenting. That I'm always gentle. I'm always this. I'm always that. And in fact, I had to today. I was reflecting, and I feel like I'm standing in the in between. You know, um, there were so many errors I believe that were made when I was a child. You know, in terms of what kind of parenting I was exposed to, and every fiber of my being always wants to do it very differently. And there are many things I do quite differently. There are many ways in which I'm quite intentional. And then there are some ways in which I think the the trauma echoes show up in my parenting, and my responses to certain things, which sometimes I'm not always proud of. And so I have been battling with sometimes feeling so frustrated and so ashamed. Like, oh my God, you just did this thing. You just responded in this way. Um, and not feeling good about that, because sometimes you know better and you want to do better. What I am very good at is saying sorry. You know, I say sorry a million times. And I feel like if I'm in this in between space, like I am breaking the cycle while also seeing some of the old wounds show up, you know? And I'm learning now to be so gentle with myself and forgive myself, for just my own adaptations, you know? Forgive myself for my own adaptations and how they show up in my parenting. Um, and the good news, I think the good news is that I think when I do get things right, they land. So I've been very, very happy to know that these two young people, they feel a sense of, they feel their agency. They feel they could stand up. They feel that they could say no. You know, that's really important because I didn't have those things. Yeah. So while I am making lots of mistakes, the things that I am doing right, they're landing. Um, and I hope I don't tear up, but it's really, I think it is hard to know better and also see yourself make the mistakes. It's hard to be a therapist too as a parent and then see some of the mistakes you make. You're like, oh my God, if they could see me now in this moment, you know? And that's not easy. So, but I've had to really, really humble myself and just be thankful that at least at this stage of the generation, for this generation, so my parenting, at this stage in the journey of my family lineage, that at least a different decision is being made. And so I'm hoping that when they are ready, if they decide to become parent, biological or otherwise parents, I that they will not hold the wounds that I hold. Yeah. That they will be able to show up, that they will have less apologizing to do because they hit some things on the head, kneel on the head immediately. Um, and that's been a painful point, but here's what it has done for me. It has held me steady in the work. When I see clients struggle with certain things and I communicate to them and I understand, I'm not understanding just theoretically, you know, I'm understanding as a person who has lived some of these things as well. When I see people struggle with things for a long time, I'm understanding this in a fundamental way. I can connect to it in ways that maybe they don't understand because I'm there with you. Yeah. And so it makes me even more committed to the work. Like I love what I do, you know. I love sitting, even when I'm tired, I still feel that I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing at this time. And there are times when I have seen myself um, walk into spaces that were not in alignment with what I should be doing at this time. Maybe because I'm trying to, I don't know, maybe for my own esteem or whatever. And then I realize that what I'm supposed to be doing is right here, which is helping and supporting clinicians and helping. I think that for me is what feels so right and from at this time.
I do want to talk about your growth journey, particularly because I've seen you go through it, like cracking through the egg. But before that, I just wondering, just a last question about your childhood. Was there a teacher, a mentor, or even a struggle that helped form the worldview you carry into your professional life that really, I realize you got your family history that we all do, but did you get some kind of mentorship or watch, like what impacted you to like overcome?
Strangely enough, I just remembered the first person I opened up to when I was struggling as a child was my friend, my very good friend Shad. What did Shad teach me? Shad taught me unconditional love.
Mm,
And there was a way Shad could hear the ugliest of the ugly and never flinch. It was all okay. And I think that, wow, sorry, these questions are helping me. I've never been asked this before, so it's hitting me how the impact he had on me. He he taught me how to, by him staying present, he taught me how to stay present. He
mm,
wasn't a therapist, he's not a therapist, but he taught me how to stay present. When and as he was sharing, and later on in life, as he shared more of his journey, I began to also respect that I didn't have to be perfect to stay present. So even with the clients I work with right now, I didn't have to be perfect. I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to have a perfect life in order to be present for another human being. Shad taught me humanity. He taught me that nothing was too much to sit with, you
mm,
know. And so when I sit with people right now, I remember to myself, nothing is too much to sit with. And I'm not a perfect therapist either. I'm sure there are times when I make mistakes, but at the end of it, I know there's a part that he taught me that there is nothing that is too much to sit with,
mm,
and that human beings and the pain that people hold is deserving of a witness.
mm,
Not just so it's not so when people come to me for therapy, it's not just that you're not just paying me to help you. I am giving you, in my opinion, what is your right. You have a right to be witnessed. Yeah. And in this world, we don't witness other people. We do not witness other people. We don't hold other people in their humanity and witness them. We have conditions. We have conditions for belonging, conditions for witnessing. And I feel in my work now, I am it is my joy, it is my responsibility to witness. Yeah, people pay me, but but the payment, I think, is more, for me. I understand it at this time as being more about helping me to be able to show up more in what I love to do, because you're helping me sustain my family, etc. So I could show up. But people deserve to be witnessed. As I look at the world, especially with the growth of social media, the world is just becoming so harsh, and the harshness is now so invasive and intrusive. You're exposed to harshness all of the time. Yeah. Um, your picture is up on Facebook or social or TikTok or wherever it is, and there you're vulnerable. So you're constantly walking in vulnerability. And I feel like therapy is this space, this very tender context that I have to hold, where there is no judgment in this space, where you are not under the gaze of a society just waiting to point out your flaws, what you fail at, what you're not good at, but another human who wants you to know that you are worthy of being witnessed. That's what I understand, and that's what Shad, I think, taught me.
Is that your gift as a therapist? Like really holding space and witnessing? Or maybe there's other gifts, but it seems like
I don't
a
know.
big one.
I struggle with imposter syndrome, so I don't know if I know my gifts. I don't know. It's you ask me what my gifts are, and I can feel a part of me feel like, it's hard
What
to
would Jules say?
identify. Huh?
What would Jules say?
What would Julianne Taylor Shaw say? I don't know. We have to ask her when she does her podcast. I don't, she thinks I'm smart. Um, and she thinks I hold the room well. I think I don't know if my low self esteem part isn't very good at using the word gift, but I'll say what my desire
Yeah.
is to ensure that you know that this thing is worthy of being witnessed. And so if you want to call that a gift, so be it. But I want you to know that it is okay to feel this thing. And and I learned this from Jules, just of courseness and okayness. And of course, this is really when you're being with people and you're saying, of course you're struggling, of course. And as I said to a client today, I can't guarantee that this thing is going to stop. There's a thing that we do in psychotherapy, Brian, and I think it's because of the capitalistic ethos underneath it, right? We seem to think that if we come with all the best strategies, people will just heal and be better. Yeah. And that isn't always the case. Some things shift and transform quite easily, and some things don't. I'm here for the don't as well. Yeah. I am here for the don't. I'm here for the won't. I'm here for the cannot. And I want persons to know that they have someone, even when they're in the don't, won't, and cannot. Yeah. And that we don't, it's, we never know what's going to happen. Sometimes you learn, sometimes something shifts, or sometimes what you learn is just your capacity for holding it is a lot more than you thought it was. Or sometimes all it is that there's somebody once a week or twice a week who is willing to be your witness in the don't, the won't, and the cannot.
Yeah. I also I got back to one of your demos. I think it was a relational privilege that you played of a couple in the UK.
Yeah.
I don't remember if they were Black or Muslim.
Black.
The Black, and she experienced a lot of racism, and he didn't. And there was
Yeah.
that tension between the two.
Yes. Yeah. You remember very well.
That was like 5 years ago. And like, and from, we just watched a 10-minute segment, of course, of many hours, but you held space that they're both truths were correct. And how do you come together?
Yeah. Yeah. It is something, it's so interesting. I was sitting with it's something that I believe is something, I was sitting with a couple on Saturday night. And yes, I work on Saturday night sometimes. But I was sitting with a couple on Saturday night. And I was saying that something similar to that can be appreciated, that these two things can be true at the same time. And it's my responsibility, I think, to let people know that these two things can be true, and I can hold space for these two truths at the same time. So I'm often finding myself as a couples therapist sitting in two realities, really understanding that it isn't that one is better than the other or one is more worthwhile than the other, that people are speaking to you out of the vantage point and the implicit memory system that they're holding at that point in time. That makes sense. And my responsibility often feels like I have to hold these two. Yeah.
Yeah. Akilah, do you feel like any tension between like your academic frameworks and all the things you studied and the lived realities that you want to bring into the room around race, identity, or colonial legacy?
I'll say two things about that. I think there is more tension between what I studied years ago and now than to what I've been exposing myself to at this point in time. So I think when I studied as a practitioner years ago, I think I left with an understanding of the work that wasn't necessarily always in alignment with the fact that people's traumas don't always necessarily shift. There was a way in which I think I was taught that if you do this and you apply all of these exactly in this particular way, there'll be a shift. And the tension came from watching that that isn't always the case. And number two, but I think, and maybe this has been intentional on my part, I think I have intentionally found spaces that, and found frameworks and found colleagues and found teachers whose understanding are in alignment with the grace that I think that we need to hold for people. So I have seen myself pull away from some methodologies and models which feel too formulaic, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
and lean more into the ones that do two things: appreciate neurobiology and appreciate the reality of human condition. You know, I found myself feeling wanting to lean more into honesty. Like I remember, I don't know if you know this, but I will tell you. When I was teaching my first course with you on my own, I remember when I had to work with the marketing team, and I was sent the copy of, you know, the ad, the page for the ad, and I was doing so much editing on that because I was like, we can't guarantee certain people, we can't guarantee clinicians certain things. We can't guarantee them that if they use these things, they're going to get all of these exact results. You
Right.
know, I want to show up with an honesty, letting them know that this is what I have to offer the world. And you know what? It may work, it may not work. And more so, I also wanted to be in dialogue with people. I wanted a very generative space, you know? Did I accomplish that? Not sure, but I wanted a very generative space with other clinicians. And so I felt like that I have pulled away from modalities where it feels like we are overselling what we can really do. Yeah. Um, Sometimes we have great successes, sometimes we don't. And I think there's a radical honesty we need about ourselves as practitioners and teachers in the field, especially when we're teaching models. Yeah, to let people know that this thing is an imperfect science, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. Could it be, of course, you can't guarantee anything, but also not that you're there, that you don't miss moments for healing. Like you can't, like when they pop up, you have the, for lack of a better, you have the toolkit, you have the presence to
Yeah,
show people a different reality or unhook them.
yeah. I
Right.
think I think so. As a clinician, I think I spend time being what's called a linguistic detective, and so when those moments show up, I do feel like I can say, ah, do you see this? Ah, do you see
Mm.
that?
Right.
That feels very important to me. So I think I can definitely say yes to that.
And if you could sit down with your younger graduate student self today, and also for other students that might be listening, what would you tell her about patience, confidence, or trust in the process of becoming
Ooh.
a mental health professional?
I would tell her you have a lot more to offer. I would tell any clinician, any young student, you have a lot more to offer the world than you probably know, and that you probably give yourself credit for. And I would say to any young student that the world needs your voice. The world doesn't need just you trying to be somebody else's voice. So we have all these different modalities. And I think so many of us are trying to be the best this practitioner or that practitioner. I mean, that's valuable. I get that. And I don't ever want to discredit that. But I think the world also needs the wisdom of individuals more, and not
Mm.
just individuals. Because we try so hard to slot ourselves into different modalities, different models, so we could call ourselves a this practitioner or that practitioner. That I feel that we lose people's individual gifts. Yeah. And I think in the room itself, people bring it out, but I feel like there is so much more people have to say, and if they were to give themselves the opportunity and the platforms to do so, they'll be able to. I mean, I have to plug the Academy of Therapy Wisdom here. I think what you all did, by positioning a global South voice in the way that you did, you started to kind of undo some of the systems and mechanisms in our world which say that wisdom only comes from the global North. Yeah. And that all global South practitioners should do is try to get really trained in global North methodologies to call themselves therapists. Because that's what happens a lot of times. Yeah.
And maybe all fields, probably.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. And all fields.
There's arrogance and communication.
Yeah. If everybody gets there, I mean, we go to school here we go to school here in the Caribbean, but we are learning, but we have our North American textbooks. It's the most, and it's not the case. It's not always the case. There are many. We do have some Caribbean texts, etc. But I feel brave enough to say, and I feel confident enough to say, that it is certainly weighted more in favor of the global North texts, and still to this day, So I teach as well, and when I look at some of the content and some of the texts in the programs, you can see, it's largely in favor of a global North epistemology and way of understanding the world. Yeah. And I think that when we give people from the global South and individuals on the whole the ability to open up and share and add, I think we're shaping a different kind of world. We need more voices.
And what do you think is missing from the North perspective, or what does the South offer? Besides your water flows a different way when you flush. It goes counterclockwise, because we were talking earlier that I also worked in Southern Africa.
I think that there's a way we understand self. But this is tricky for me, and I'll say why it's tricky. Because I was about to say there's a sense that we have more of a sort of communalist kind of way of understanding where communities matter more, etc. And you are not just you, we're less individualistic. But I'm not always sure that's entirely true, because there's a very intense osmosis, a very intense diffusion of global North values to the global South. So while it might be attractive for me to say that this space is more community oriented, I also see the ways in which global North understandings of the world and individualistic and highly individualistic ideals also show up here as well. Yeah. That being said, the value systems are different. I think we have to offer the world, I'm thinking, the remnants still of our indigenous cultures. Yeah. So even here in the Caribbean, we still have the influences of African culture. Brian, you and I were dancing in Washington, in DC. We know we still have remnants of our music, some of our speech patterns, some of our words, some of our understandings. They're still apparent to some extent, and I feel like some of those things can definitely be useful in sharing with the global North as ways of healing, of ways of staying present. I think those are things that we have tapped into that would be useful to share with the world.
Yeah. You think East West has got so much attention, China, US, Asia, US, Europe, but we don't go down, compare North, South.
Yeah. We don't. But I think bit by bit we're changing. I just feel saddened at the thought that it may be like, sometimes I think that we have some kind of version of Orientalism where sometimes people just appreciate us because of how attractive it looks to appreciate us, and so we become, is it what I want to use, muse? But sometimes we can even become an object. So even when people are talking about decolonizing practice and DEI work, etc., sometimes we still can become an object of the North American and European gaze, even in inclusion. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a fascination sometimes with us that often can sometimes feel like tokenism, you know?
Sure.
Um, and there's an inclusion sometimes that does not feel, how do I put it?
Authentic.
I think the intention to include is there, but I think because there is still a belief that the global north knows, yeah, when we are brought into the conversation, sometimes, not all cases, we are brought in as as an adaptation, yeah, to global north understanding, as opposed to an understanding that is supposed to stand on its own right.
Mm.
Yeah. I had an experience recently in a context where I felt that in a very powerful way, and it was heartbreaking. Just to see the ways in which um, we're not very intentional about positioning the global south as being a fundamental and equal part of the conversation, as opposed to an appendage, an aside, you know. It's still a context where the global north discourse or interpretation um, is dominant or dominates, and the global south understanding is included, but certainly not given the same amount of breath, right? Breath in both spellings, yeah, that it should be given in this space. Yeah, and I felt it, and it was quite painful. And the thing is that you can say it a million times, and it's hard to say all the time. It's hard to say, you need to give this the attention it needs. You need to
Mm.
give this the voice. It's painful, it's hard, it's exhausting. I think people see when you do the work, they see your enthusiasm for the work, but they don't see the pain that you have to feel when you're trying, especially as a Black. And I've said this in some spaces, and I know not everybody necessarily agrees, but the Black global South experience is not the same thing as the Black global North experience. They're not the same. Yeah. There's some things here that are more intense, and there's some things here that are less intense. Yeah. Um, and when you live in the global south, when you even try to break into global north conversations, you do have an additional barrier. So you're Black, and you have this additional barrier of being from a space that is not often recognized in a particular kind of way. Yeah.
What advice would you give emerging therapists, especially therapists of color, who are trying to bring their full identity into their clinical work? And maybe there's two answers. Maybe it's a therapist in the North versus a therapist in the South. Maybe there's
Sure.
two different journeys.
It is. So let me speak from my vantage point. Let me not dare to tell a therapist in the North. Let me speak for a therapist in the South. Um, Courage.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, courage and confrontation. Those are two words. And find your tribe, and it's going to be hard. Why is courage needed? Because you will soon, I don't cry, but you will soon see where you stand in the global south in the conversations, and not in all cases, but in many. You will you will soon see that how do I want to put this? You will soon see the barriers to inclusion and how intense they really are. You will have to fight the battle constantly when you open your mouth with this accent. And of course, the accent varies across countries, but accents vary across countries. Sorry, but you will soon see how that can show up as a barrier, but still keep speaking anyway. Yeah. And you will also find your spaces that will quickly and happily open the door for you. Yeah. So while I'm sharing the pain, I'm also well aware of the fact that not all spaces operate this way. And there are some spaces that will welcome you and they will cherish you because of your voice. And there are some spaces that, because of their inbuilt biases that they can't even recognize, they will not see you. They may gaslight you and you are upset. Yeah. And you will just have to keep talking anyway. But be of good courage. Just stand in there, be in there with it. And also over time, ask yourself, sorry, what are you really doing this for? That's a question I had to ask myself. What am I really doing this for? It cannot be for global North acceptance. Yeah. I think that's a thing that becomes a part of your journey. That sometimes you find yourself trying to do this for global North acceptance. And over time, you're going to have to define what growth is on your own terms. Yeah. And that is not an easy realization to always come to. Yeah. But if you're trying to just find global North acceptance, you're playing into the same problematic dynamics in the first place. You're playing into the hierarchies and you're believing that you're only valuable. The global North sees you.
Right.
Yeah. Very similar to how sometimes, blacks may think they're only valuable if whites see them. Very similar. So yeah, that's the advice I would give to therapists of color in the global South. Yeah.
And I also see you model, you never gave up. I think you
Yeah.
had moments you're like, I need a timeout when I've seen you go through hard times, but the next day you're back at it.
Well, 2 days ago I wanted to give up again. So, but I'm back at it again. But I am back at it with a very different I'm back at it with an understanding of what are my terms, the terms I want to live by, and grieving what cannot happen. Yeah, and just staying very much in alignment with what is going back to your Ori. Yeah, going back to Ifa tradition. What am I here for? Yeah, not
Yeah.
what this one thinks I'm here for.
Right.
Right. What am I here for on this earth? Yeah, and trying to live by that.
And I notice you also are able to surround yourself with just people, I don't know if I want to say mentors, but people, friends, community that really
Yeah.
help. Like you've been really brilliant creating resources like that for your
Yeah.
journey.
I'm very intentional now about um after some of the mistakes of the past, I am very intentional now about who I keep in my space. And yeah, I would say,
And
you
that was
know,
an evolution, right? Because you find
yes,
out
it was. It
there's some
was.
people that you had to get rid of and
Yeah,
other
we won't
people,
put the quality names,
we're
but
not maybe names, and other people, you cultivate it.
yeah, I think, but when I started to walk into my truth, I think, what's beautiful about it? We were fighting to be in each other's worlds at the same time. So the people that, I'm looking down, I just had a aha moment. But the people who who I feel destined to be around, we're fighting to be in more aha moments coming up. We're fighting to be in each other's worlds equally. And I think that as a global South practitioner and trainer and teacher, etc., sometimes you can be fighting. Another aha moment. What is going on in this podcast? But sometimes you're fighting to be in worlds that are not fighting equally to have you, you know? And but I think if I'm going back to Ori, the essence of why we are here, what we are here for. Yeah. I think I am at the best place. I'm most in alignment with my Ori when I am in spaces that are fighting as much to have me there as I am fighting to have them, and being in alignment. And I've had some beautiful experiences. I've worked with some wonderful organizations, even throughout the US, you know, where, so I don't want to make this sound as if, I've just had all these horrible global north experiences. No, 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 far from. I've had some that have been challenging. And I've also had some that have really, really shown up in ways that respected global south wisdom.
Mm.
Yeah. And those are the spaces and those are the people that I think I can most experience my Ori in, where I can
Mm.
experience what the reason I am here. And I think as a therapist, as an emerging therapist, especially therapists in the global south, make sure that when you walk into spaces, there are spaces that hold your dignity firmly. I think that's it. That's really important.
Mm. And last question, what ideas or projects are you most excited about exploring next?
Well, I have a book coming out.
A
Yeah,
book.
yeah, I have a book. The book is done. It will be out on March 3rd, 2026. It's called Marginalized Couples in Therapy. And speaking of spaces that have fought to have me and I've felt appreciated by. I mean, I did have a very good experience with Norton, WW Norton, I must say. And it was an opportunity as a global South practitioner who works in various. So even though I live in the global South, I see clients from all over the world. And so them giving voice to a global South practitioner to talk about the experiences of working with BIPOC and LGBTQI couples globally, and looking at the impact of systemic trauma on these couples. That's my baby. That's coming out on March 3rd, 2026. Excited to have other people read it. And so that's my big project. The other project is walking deeper by authenticity. That's a project. Yeah. So I'm making sure that next year that I am always in alignment with what I want for myself and what I want for the world. That's another project. My third project, which is the most important project of my two children. I'm making sure that they are raised in such a way that they could survive and be in truth and in alignment as well. So those are my three big projects.
Awesome. And we'll be glad to help you on your book launch. We'll figure out something to do. So thank you, Akilah, so much for sharing openly and all your reflections on belonging and healing and your journey. That's, you've got so much more to offer the world. And for listeners who want to go deeper into your work, where can they find you?
Oh, you can look at my website, AkilahRiley-Richardson.com. So if you want to get in touch with me, you can shoot me a message there, or info@AkilahRiley-Richardson.com. And, if you want to do a course or two that I've done with Therapy Wisdom, a course that I've done with Therapy Wisdom, you can definitely find that course here as well. So there are different opportunities to find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you all for listening.